friends? It is the Man in the Middle show with Kevin and Joe. Me being Kevin and that being Joe. What's up, friend? Looking clean, looking fit, ready to go 1 week from race day. How's all that feeling, Joe? It's just been such a journey.
Good. Just ran a light 9 miles this morning. Feeling good.
Yeah.
It's all relative, right? I used to not be able to run a mile last year, and now I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna do 8, 9 miles this morning at pace, and you know, it's good
Yeah.
stuff. I'm getting excited. It's something to look forward to.
No doubt about it. Yeah. I'm excited for you. And I can't wait to hear all about it after, hopefully soon after, when it's all
Yeah.
fresh and
And you
in.
know what? Putting that positive pressure on myself like I am when I'm in the thick of it, there's a lot of things that surface for me
Mm,
that we're going to be talking about in
yeah.
today's episode.
Yeah. Today we're gonna go into the dark side of everybody. Everybody has what we can call a dark side, what Jung called the shadow. And, think of it in general as the traits we repress, deny, or even hide. We're afraid of how those things will or won't be accepted by others. Certainly, if people in your close proximity, I'm sure many, many people, living those lives of quiet desperation just because they don't feel able to express some things about themselves, professionally, romantically, whatever it is. And so, Joe, define for me, because when you throw out this topic, my first thought was, I really don't feel like I have a dark side. Like there's not a part of me on a daily basis that I'm like, I'm not looking over my shoulder.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point, right? Because we automatically associate dark side with bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not necessarily bad. It's they're deemed unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
they could be unacceptable from your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So generational context. They could be deemed unacceptable in your culture, so cultural context,
Yeah.
or like overall society, right? And
Right.
so like I'll just give like a
Yeah.
wide, like easy borderline kind of crazy analogy.
Good.
If you go to Thailand, you can go to a store and select from women that you want to sleep with.
Perfectly legal.
Perfectly
Accepted.
legal, totally acceptable, nothing wrong with it.
Wow.
And it's illegal here. And you will go to jail. They don't even have that except in Vegas, right? Like
Right.
one little area, right? So it's like, and I always use that as an example because it's like extreme, right? So like
Yeah.
it's easy to understand, but like there's so many of those things
Yeah.
that spider web, and then the family thing. Well, that's a whole nother story, right? So I would say for the sake of learning, um, like it's like you said, those qualities that we repressed, the disowned emotions, right? Rejected capabilities, like unacknowledged desires that you may have, or like just
Yeah.
basically unconscious patterns, right?
Got
So,
it. Yeah.
like all of those things, however they're applicable, good or bad,
Yeah.
of how that's deemed, has more to do with the things that are stopping you from totally being yourself,
Yeah.
or in the unconscious side, the things that are running your life that you don't even
Mm.
know are running your life, and you just think it's
Oof.
fate, right? And that's
Really.
one of the things that Jung did. So it's like,
Yeah. It's deep.
so does that help bring anything
Yeah, that
to the
does.
surface for you?
And I will say, I'm going to speak very broadly here, but that spent a good chunk of time now very consistently learning about myself. And I've had the great um, sort of opportunity to create a lot of space for that, which I know many people do never get in their lives. And so,
Yeah.
and I've been very, you know, I just spent a lot of time thinking of things, and even if I get something that I'm unsure about, I explore it privately and see, okay, does this feel weird and scary because it's wrong or because it's different and exciting? I mean, sometimes just going out, I talk endlessly about dancing. People must think it's strange, but that's been my connection to the outside world. And it's something that I personally deeply enjoy. So a little thing like that of, oh, well, 55-year-old white guy, you can't like, you're not going to be, you know, it's not like I want to dance professionally or whatever. I just want to be the best dancer I can, guy who goes on the floor and feels good. And you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's a simple little thing, but would be such an easy thing to deem weird or unacceptable for people in my who I know, or you know what I mean? Like, why is he putting so much focus on that? It's kind of strange. Is he gay? Like a lot of dancers. When I go to these clubs and I'm dancing, like I've been asked several times, "Hey, are you gay or straight?" Now, part of it is because I'm in that area of town. A woman asked me that last night, and I said, "Why do people keep asking me that?" She said, "Because you're in the well, you're comfortable in your body, you have some style, and you're in the gay district, so it's a natural question." I'm like, "Okay, I get it. Straight, you know." So anyway, point being, I for me, what is dark, I guess. So yes, your description does help because being empathetic, knowing that man, so many people are trapped in lives that they and you know, it's funny, man, when we think about like just go back to your example, prostitution being legal and accepted, I guess in Thailand. I haven't been there. And we hear this about Amsterdam all the time too. Remember what now everybody smokes weed everywhere in the US, but it was always, oh my God, you gotta go to
Yeah.
Amsterdam.
Remember
And
the 80s and 90s? Holy
yeah, it was like,
cow. Yeah.
oh my God, there's women and drugs everywhere. And it's like just how they live and like, whoa. Um, but then you have to, particularly when it comes to the prostitution, right? Well, then it's a choice of is this something I want to take part in? Like, okay, I'm here in this moment, what happens in Vegas and all that, but you got to wake up as you the next morning and when you get home from your trip, and is that going to be a freeing experience or is that going to be regrettable? You know, Joe, I have friends who are single and they live on these dating apps, and it consumes a large part of their lives and their energy and their money and their mental energy. And when they indicate that the reason they're doing it is because they want to sleep with women, I say, why don't you just fork over $1,000 for like a professional, discreet sex worker and have a time of your life? And they're like, oh, I would never do that. I would never do that. I would much rather meet an unsuspecting stranger and try to engineer the whole evening to that same effect. So
Yeah.
there's this interesting moral compass that we all carry around.
Well, so that's that's one of the distinctions in emotions. I know that I learned so in my ontological coaching training, we did linguistic deconstruction of 50 emotions. And one of the ones that stood out to me the most was the distinction between guilt and shame, right?
Mm.
Because a lot of times they're lumped in together. Guilt is you have broken some intrinsic moral code with yourself. Shame is you broken a cultural or societal moral code. Okay. So for them, that's the line,
Yeah.
right? So they're behaving like what's totally logical to you. It's like, dude, just go get a release.
Yeah.
Because if that's what you need, just right. But again, that goes to show you how deep those cultural contexts go, in terms of how that helps to shape your own morality,
Right.
right? Because again, like I'm the same as you. I'm like, yo, just go handle your business, man. And then you can have some post nut clarity, whatever you need, right? That's what we're calling it nowadays. So it's like, and I get that, and that's totally cool. And then other people are like, they can't do that. And they're like, no, I just want to, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just really date and try and meet somebody to be with, right? Because,
Yeah.
the problem is though, too, that there's a lot of people that they go on those things and they are sleeping around, but what they really want is a long lasting relationship, right? So their behavior isn't reflective of what their ideals really are. So
Right.
then they're just setting themselves up consistently with disappointment. Then there's a whole other story of, worth and self worth
Right.
and all that stuff.
Right.
But again, like, that just goes to show you like that clear distinction in culture. Like, well, I would never do that. It's like, well, it's
Yeah.
going to cost you somehow. Like,
Right.
you know,
I say it almost in the most practical sense of someone go, oh my God, I have to clean my floors. It's going to take half the day Sunday. I'm like, hire a house cleaner. It's just a practical use of your time and energy. And, but yeah, when it comes to that, understandably, and then there are, I feel like, I think we may have touched on this. I still have this naive view of people in the world. Like I'm not a naive person, but I'm always a little surprised to see how funky people are when they do get into their dark side a little bit. Like, oh, damn, okay, didn't see that from you, but yeah. And for me, like I really don't have judgment. It's just interesting and I really admire people who are super comfortable with themselves. And I don't know if you know Chris Haddad, but really admire Chris because he just is who he is and owns everything, every mistake he ever makes, and he just lives that way. He and his wife have an open marriage, and I'm not talking out of school. Like he talks about this stuff all the time. He just lives in that other way of, well, why not? Why can't I do that? Why wouldn't I do that? I'm interested in it.
yep.
And I really respect that when people have that. And do you think it's like they had a moment of overcoming the repression, like they felt probably lost and all that and restricted in life until they finally had enough, or there was some inciting incident that then allowed them to become sort of freer, or what do you think leads to that, or were they just always like that? Because rarely would they be supported in their young years, probably, if they were,
Right.
that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. I'd have to talk to that person to dig deeper
Right.
into that. What I would say is that there are ways to begin exploring your shadow, right? Or your dark side. One of the big ones is like noticing your triggers. So like pay attention to the people that like strongly irritate or get you upset. And typically your like strongest emotional reactions are the places where like you had the most disowned aspects of yourself,
Mm.
right? Or
Mm-hmm.
examine your judgments, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're harshly judging somebody
Right.
quite often, that's because there's elements that are, you know, of you rejecting yourself.
Right.
And that's a projection of you onto them,
Right.
right? The other big one is patterns, right? So you look at situations that consistently arise in your life, and then you begin to gain awareness that this is unconsciously happening. And then you can begin to pause in those moments and reflect on it and bring that unconscious to light. Um, if you get like feedback from people That's a big one, right? Like, if you just like dismiss or reject that stuff rather than digging in and like analyzing what truth might be in it, that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
You know, the moments too that you like let yourself down, like examine that. Like, why did you behave that way? You
Right.
know, what led to that? Um, you know, and then was there any like family taboos, right? Like, were there any behaviors or qualities that like were forbidden or shameful in your family?
Right.
Um, and you know, one of them that really comes to mind, and this actually just happened recently, uh, in my life was so my son just finished up Footloose the musical,
Yeah.
and I was telling you about that, and like he had this big wave of sadness
Mm.
after the last show. This was like 4 months of his life.
Well,
He would leave in the morning at 7 in the morning to go to school, and I would pick him up at 7:30 at night. He would do like,
well,
you know, 4 hours a day after school of this play, this musical, with all these people. You know, a couple of his people that he got really close friends with are seniors, so they're leaving the
mm.
school at the end of this year.
Yeah.
So this big wave of sadness hit him when he realized that this thing was now over. And he like really did the work. He was really into it, ended up being a leader in the production and really cemented himself for the remaining 3 years now,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
And he was just bawling.
Yeah.
Okay. And he didn't know I was there
Mm.
sitting in the audience. I had came early to come pick him up and I watched the end of the last show because I had come earlier that day and watched the show.
Mm.
And I just sat there, sat back and watched him behave. And I watched him go to every single person on the crew and give them a hug and thank them. And he was sad. Sometimes he was crying harder. Sometimes he was okay. Um, I saw some of the kids, it made them very uncomfortable
Mm.
that he was, you know, visibly expressing himself right where he was at. I saw it making a lot of the parents uncomfortable.
Mm.
Um, and even one of his teachers said, "Man, I need to put you in a room with my mom for 30 minutes because she'll tell you to buck up and wipe away those tears."
Really? Wow.
Yep. So, and it made me really proud.
Yeah.
It made me really proud because, like, last time I checked, there's not some like specific playbook on how you handle sadness in life.
Yeah.
I do know on topics like this that if you teach your children to suppress sadness and grief and loss at a young age like that, they deem that as wrong, and we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to sit here and try and shape my son's expression of where he's at for the
Yeah.
comfortability of everybody
Right.
in the room because they have no idea how to express their own
Right.
humanity, right?
Exactly. Yes, brother.
And that's not the time for me to be like, dude, quit acting like a little bitch.
Mm-mm-mm. Right.
Because he's not on his fifth mile on the treadmill.
Yeah.
He's going through the loss of a fantastic experience that he just had, and it's not ever happening again.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
Right.
like, but if you're not conscious of those things, you're just running on, like, you know, my dad told me to stop being a little bitch and boys don't do that. Well, then
Yeah.
that's what you're going to do. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's
Because
gonna
that's
lead.
what happened to me. Right.
Mm.
And the reason why my dad did that is because he couldn't handle me crying.
Mm-hmm.
He
Right.
couldn't he couldn't handle what it did to him with me being in pain.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that was.
That's right.
You have to settle down what you're experiencing because I can't handle it.
Hmm.
Right. So, like, I'm not in the business of doing that. So then that goes back to kind of what you were saying about Chris, right? Like, he's not going around making sure everybody is comfortable with him being himself.
Right.
He's going around just being himself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that's what that is, right? Now, those are the moments that I realize as a parent that I celebrated him for that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And then I asked him what was going on. And then once he saw me, he, ran and gave me a big hug and it was cool,
Yeah.
because he was, he wanted to express himself to me just like he
Yeah.
was doing the other people. So that made me feel even better because he
Yeah.
felt safe to do that.
Yes. Yes.
I'm
Yes.
like,
How horrible would it
he didn't
be?
see me and then all of a sudden,
Yes.
oh,
Exactly.
got to put myself together. Like he just came up and gave me a
Yeah.
hug, kept doing what he was doing.
It's beautiful.
You know what I'm saying? But like,
Yes.
I don't know what the playbook is, but I know it's not what I was taught.
Mm.
Like, I don't know what the playbook is on sadness and grief, but I know it, what, like,
Yeah.
my own experience with losing my dad, I expressed it in a healthy way. So then it's like, okay, that's what he's going through. Maybe not as deep, but I don't know how he feels that.
Right.
So that's a good
That's a
example
really good example. Yeah.
of like, hey, like that dark side was a family taboo.
Yeah.
That woman was not allowed to cry around her mom,
Yeah. Buck up.
the
Wow.
person that's responsible for nurture.
Right.
So then how hard of a life is that?
Yeah.
So
That's
that
true.
that's kind of an example of what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. And not to keep going on a rant, but I can give you guys an example of one of my own, and that might help as well.
Yeah.
Like humor. You and I both love humor. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you're a comedian for God's sakes, and I wanted to be on SNL as a kid, right? And
Yeah.
so I learned very early that being funny and making light of stuff is a great way to not ever allow the pain of things to fully penetrate.
Yep.
You don't let it all the way in. You just kind of make a joke about it, right? Even if it's something serious that you shouldn't even really joke about.
Sure.
It's great if you deal with it and then do all that and make a joke about it. Sure, you can make a joke about anything, and I agree with that. You can do that, but like for me personally, it was a defense mechanism
Yeah. Because
for not allowing myself to fully get upset because I wasn't allowed to get upset.
yeah, because it's not like you would deflect it, take note, and then later examine it.
Right.
That's not how
And
we're
then write a
operating.
joke about it.
Yeah, not how most comedians operate. You know,
Right.
it's just a quick side note. It's very interesting. I don't know if you've seen Bill Burr's latest special.
No, but you texted me about it and I'm going to watch it.
Yeah. What's interesting about it, not only is it excellent as you would imagine, he's one of the masters of this craft.
Oh, yeah.
But he is going through a very man in the middle moment in his life right now. And he talks a lot about it on stage. And he talks about, and I just saw a clip on Conan that was excellent. I'm going to send that to you too, because if you want to see how a comedic mind works, there's a thing at the end of the conversation that captures it perfectly. But he's talking about, they have this great discussion, he and Conan, about there was always this accepted agreement among comedians that you can either be great or you can be happy. Really?
Yeah.
And they were both like, I was fine with being fucked up because I wanted to be great. And if that's the deal, I'll take it. I'll go to the crossroads and I'll meet the devil. And then what they both were saying, and particularly this is where Bill's at, not true. It's just not true. And you find out it's not true and you go, I'm destroying everyone around me every day. I've got all this anger. And he thought he was a tough guy. He thought he had to be tough. He talked about, this is really some tender shit to be talking about. It's like, what did he say? Some example of, oh, he saw in a movie, like an old movie, Cliff Montgomery or somebody talk about tough guys. They shave with cold water. He said for 8 years he shaved with cold water because he thought it was making him tougher from like his teens into some point in adulthood. So that little kind of thing, it's, you know, it,
Yep.
similar to what you're saying is like, you just get something, it clicks, it makes sense. You think it looks cool. Like, well, that guy's cool and I'll just do what he's doing. And
Yep.
you've been tearing your fucking face apart for 8 years for no reason. But, you know, it makes sense to you in the time. But think about that. Every single time you shave, you're cementing this belief, this ideal into yourself. That's, you know, the commonness of that occurrence. And so now he's having this, he's doing work and he's getting past the anger. And it's like bringing another level to him in his humor that's really fascinating to watch, right? But
Yep.
um yeah, so anyway, back to what you were saying, because it was a great riff. So humor you used and deflected, and at some point, what through your journey into sobriety, I'm guessing, is when it you started to have the kind of mindset that could recognize
Yeah.
that, or
Yeah. Of course, I did the pendulum swing
mm-hmm,
where I got like super serious.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Nothing was a joke.
Yeah, right.
And then it was like I was just all business all the time,
Yeah.
which is kind of a polite way of saying I was just being a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? And then I had a couple of people in my life kind of say, um, you're not as fun to be around as you used to be,
That's a
you
tricky.
know?
Yeah.
And a lot of that is like, hey, when you're doing deep work, there is kind of just a journey you go on and finding yourself and
Yeah.
finding, you know, what's best for you and what's not best for you.
And where's the balance? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, that's definitely a top value for me today. It's in my top five core values is humor. And you know me, dude. I'm always trying to have a good
Yeah.
time. And I let all that go. The other thing too, another one of mine was kind of that highly addictive personality,
Yeah.
and how much destruction and everything that caused in my life. And now it's one of my superpowers, right?
Yeah.
Because that you leverage that what is deemed as a disability or a handicap because of what it can be or what it can turn you into. But if you put that highly addictive, hyper focused mindset and focus on positive things, you can move the needle rather quickly on stuff. And it served me very well, right? But it's about understanding yourself and integrating those things in a positive way rather than having it running your life unconsciously. It's
Yes.
about bringing it to the consciousness and integrating it into your life in a positive way, right? So
Yes.
now rather than using humor as a shield or a deflection tool, I use it as a way of connection, and I use it as a way of lightness, and I use it as a way of 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 bringing up positive things and lifting people up. And then the highly addictive personality, I utilize it as a superpower at work and with relationships and with things I'm passionate about, as well as like parenting and relationships and these
Yeah.
things, right? It's so it's that's really what it's about.
Yeah. It's applicable everywhere.
Yeah, but the cool thing is, Kevin, is that, 75% of adults, they report experiencing like significant psychological transition during this period of life of midlife. And it's as a result of confronting these aspects of ourself,
Right.
right? And then the cool thing is that people like us that begin working on this stuff, the shadow work or some type of introspective
Yeah.
practice, shows a 40% reduction in depression and anxiety as a result of doing the work.
Mm,
40%, bro, compared
that's
to people
big.
that don't.
Yeah. 100 makes total sense.
So, with all of that now that we just talked about, what is something that surfaced for you that maybe was unclear before we stepped into this conversation? Just for the sake of learning, I guess.
Yeah. I was reminded, um, I did a thing last week, and going by your definition, I felt a lot of guilt about it. I broke a rule of my own, and I beat myself up about it for 2 days on purpose because I
Ooh.
wanted to make sure it will never happen again. And I'll share it. Tuesday night, I went downtown. Whenever I go out, I always Uber. If I'm maybe going to have any drinks, I'm just Ubering there. But I had to go downtown for an appointment at 4. And then I was like, I got the rest of the day. Next thing I know, it's, oh, this band I love is playing at this club at 10. It's 7. I wonder if I can make it to 10. Let's have a beer. The next thing I know, it's 2 in the morning. And I am in no condition to drive. And normally for me, that is automatic, call the Uber, get in the car. But for some reason, I drove home. And it was really fucking stupid. And nothing happened. I'm sure I was driving fine, but that's not the point. Anything could have happened. And it would have really derailed my life had something happened, whether it was my fault, someone else. Doesn't think about making a choice like that is you could still be innocent. You're guilty of the choice. You could be innocent of the incident and you're now very guilty because you're inebriated, right? It's just a fucking horrible choice. And I woke up the next day and I just felt so disappointed in myself. I felt shame, what felt like me to shame. And I just said, I kept busting my own balls about it all day long, like verbally, like, man, wow, this is, yeah, these are the choices you're making. Like, and I knew it wasn't going to be a pattern or anything, but and I even thought about why did that happen? Why did I violate my rule? And it's because I was out of the pattern. I did not plan to have my night go that way. But then when it did, I didn't, for some logistic, I don't want to, I don't know, I'm going to get tickets on my car. Who gives a shit? If they tow your car, if they, none of that matters. And so I guess that's what came to light when you were talking about that. I was like, man, I that is a dark side to a sense of I made a really bad choice that for me was a violation of my own personal code. And talk endlessly about my kids about these kinds of decisions and how it's never worth it. You won't be in your right mind when that happens. And had something happen, forget the 10 grand and the logistics. And bro, losing my license for a time would completely change how I'm living right now, which I'm enjoying so much. And I just was, I could have really fucked myself, embarrassed myself with my family and had to explain to my kids. And maybe, yeah, some positive would have come of it or whatever, but I got away with it. But I spent 2 days saying, you're not forgiven. You fucked up. That was bad. You got very lucky. You had one more fucking chit down in that bag that you've been dipping in on for the last 30 years of life. There was one more down there and you just spent it. You're fucking out of chits. Okay. Do not fuck up. And had that conversation for days with myself about it. And so that may be a good example of how do we internalize, because a lot of it's the shit that happens when no one's looking. You're the first person I've told about that. I don't plan to tell anyone now and whoever's listening. But I even thought about should I tell my kids I did this? Like let them know, hey, I want you to know that I made a bad choice and everything I got lucky and it worked out, but I want to remind you that you'll face similar moments and you're out and being out party life or whatever. And you have to really dig deeper than the surface to make sure you don't make a bad choice. Like maybe that's important that I do that. But I dealt with it, kind of put it away, but I wasn't even thinking of it as a dark side or a dark moment when you brought this up, you know?
Yeah, and then the next level conversation that we're involved in with that is that all of that immediately brings up all of my dark side,
Mm,
right? Because when you say that to me, it makes me want to punch you in the fucking face.
yeah.
Like, not joking, like
Yeah, I know.
anger, right? Because
Yeah.
I have two of those DUIs within 5 years, and I drove drunk, blacked out a lot,
Mm,
probably thousands of times
damn.
over a long term period. I was always driving. So Uber wasn't even out when I got sober.
Yeah.
So, like, and cabs, we don't, Tampa Bay area, we ain't taking cabs anywhere. So I was an idiot. I was sick, right?
Yeah.
But now, since I know the destruction of what that is and what that causes, well, of course, it irritates the hell out of me, and I talk anybody off the ledge of ever doing that ever. Especially since now there's so many choices.
Yeah.
So all of
That's
that then brings up that stuff for me, right? And then I'm judging, I'm projecting, I'm pissed off. I care about you. I love you. So then, of course, I want to protect. And, so all of that stuff comes up. And
yeah.
that's an exact example for you, an exact example for me of both of our own dark side playing out in public for everyone to hear right now.
Mm,
That's it, right? So then it's like, okay, well, then what is it that I do from there? Well, number one, we accept our own humanity and, that we make mistakes, but you have to, like you said, analyze what was my thinking in that moment. What are the things that I need to do to have preventative measures next time? All of that stuff, right? And then for me, it's like, okay, well, then what do I do in that moment? I continue helping more and more people make healthy choices when it comes to alcohol, whether they're a regular drinker, a problem drinker, or a real deal alcoholic. I can serve any of those in the full spectrum of making healthy choices of what they should do. So that's a way I can integrate by not letting that rule the day for me, right?
yeah.
And that's kind of just how that stuff works. And so again, like, we can sit here and say that, like, but again, like, it happened, we move on, you did what you had to do, and then it's like boom,
Yeah. And it, for me, the gift in it is like, and that's, I had the space to deal with it and punish myself. And I knew it's like, I cemented, I even like future paced me ever being in that scenario again and brought myself there and said, fucking remember this. Remember how you feel right now in the sober light of the next day, what an asshole you feel like in knowing what could have happened. And let that be the trigger that goes, whatever with the car.
Yeah. Yeah, and the level of tolerance that I have, or I guess the heightened intolerance that I have for those situations, is as a result of I don't want someone to experience about, what that made me feel about myself. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
you felt that for 2 days, try feeling
Yeah.
that for
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
years.
Right. I
You know
mean,
what I'm saying? So it's like
yeah.
you just consistently do it over and over again. You just are lowering your integrity and,
Yeah. That's a lot to dig
so
out
it's
of.
like I don't want people to be in that situation where they're feeling that way. You know what I'm saying? So
But, that brings to mind for me this idea of rock bottom. Okay. Because, and again, I don't pretend to know the program. I've a lot of friends in it. And one thing I've been told, when I was running that foam room surrounded by drug addicts, and my boss was at the time recovered. Um, there was a guy I really felt for who needed help, and I said to him, if I can get you to a rehab, would you go? And he's like, yeah, I would. And this is back, literally looked in the yellow pages or something. And I told Bobby this, and he said, can't do that. You can't drive him there. He said, all you can do is open the phone book to the place and put it on his desk. He has to make that decision. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, or right or wrong, but it was interesting, the idea of it, that they can be drugged somewhere 100 times, quote unquote, against their will, even if they say they want the help. But until they make that choice, it won't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is too is that there are a large segment of the population that aren't like that, and they're just problem drinkers, and they make really poor choices with that, and they need to take a look at that.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of people that have come into my life that they're not the full real deal alky, and they're just are having a problem with it, and they're starting to see things come up that they're not really proud about, and they need to make changes. And then they ask questions, and they figure it out in their own way. Whether it's books or talking to people or therapy or get a coach or whatever you got to do. And then there's other people that are just regular drinkers, and they make a really, really poor choice,
Right.
and I know people that have made a really, really poor choice like that, and they took someone's life,
Hmm.
and they had to live with that,
Yeah.
so it's like I think ultimately is that a lot of times, like you said, it wasn't part of the plan. It's like
Yeah.
I made the plan before I had an inhibitor in my system,
Yes.
right? So that's the biggest thing. So now it's like, hey, no matter what, like, okay, I'm just going to drive home and then take an Uber back out there, or I'm just going to leave my car parked overnight somewhere, take the $85 ticket. And it was just an expensive,
Night
mistake
out.
on yeah,
Yeah.
expensive night out. Like I've
Yeah.
spent more than $85 on a bottle before sitting in the, you know what I mean? So like,
Right.
but again, like those are the things that, okay, all right, let me get the learning from this, let it not be in vain. And, I can take a look at that. But what I would say is that that is a fantastic example of the discussion today about facing our dark side. And that even when everything seems to be going our way, and we have so much positives in our life, we're one decision away
That was it.
from a different life. And it's like, okay, how do I reduce that? And so one of the biggest things is that um, Carl Jung said this. He said the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality.
Hmm.
For no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort.
Hmm.
So, what we were just discussing is a highly, highly engaging morality conversation.
Yes.
Okay. And so, and none of us, and that's not one where we're like, well, it's different if we do it somewhere else. It's like, no, it's the same everywhere. I remember like those old videos that they have from like the 80s when they started freaking pulling people over for DUI, and the freaking backwoods dude is like, man, I feel like I'm living with a bunch of communists, man. I can't even have a beer on the way home from work. This is crazy, man. You might as well just take my guns too and lock me up, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, when everyone's dying like crazy from
Yeah.
DUI car crashes, like, sorry, that's not has nothing to do with communism. That has to do with the societal freaking safety
Yeah,
net.
the
But
correction is
again,
needed here. Yeah.
it goes to show you that, like, 40 years later, the whole entire collective consciousness on that topic has shifted.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So again, because there is a dark side to the individual and the collective, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
okay.
Hmm.
So like, again, I think the big thing that I would have people walk away with is that this is an opportunity to ask yourself some questions about what those things are in your life. Because if I already gave you the statistics on, okay, like, if I start engaging in this work, I'm probably going to have overall better psychological well-being, and I'm going to have like less anxiety, less symptoms of depression. Like, I'm just going to feel better. Then it's my responsibility to start confronting these things. It just so happens that when we get into midlife, like Kevin and I are now, and I'm assuming since you're listening, you are too, they are coming to the surface a lot faster because of getting into the second adulthood, where you're searching for meaning, you're looking deeper at things, and you're like, is this it? And then it's like, okay, well, I need to begin to look inward to start figuring out all the stuff that's created all of the things externally that I don't like.
Yeah.
Right. And that is upsetting and simultaneously for me very powerful, because it's like, damn, like, then I'm in control of that shit because it involves me, and I'm the only person that can change me, and I
Yeah.
can't change all this other people.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. No one's coming to save you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sucks. And that's a harsh
Yeah.
reality, but you meet people all the time who are, and I think that's why people, when you say, how you doing? I always do want an answer, but sometimes the answer is, whoa. I mean, we're here in Florida and people are still devastated by the hurricanes that happened almost 6 months ago now, and their lives are destroyed. And they just, someone was
Yeah.
telling me last night, like, I don't know who I am since the hurricane. My everything I knew about life is completely destroyed. I'm not getting help. No one's coming to save me. And it's wow. But that same person was not doing any internal work to try to understand it or realize or find strength. They were just saying, I'm getting screwed by the system because somebody told me this was supposed to happen a different way and it's not. Well, guess what? That happens a lot in life. Not everybody's following these rules they set out. And so that's when you have to say, I can't control anything that happens around me or even to me, but I 100% get to control how I react to it. And whether it's an incident that brings you to that moment, or it's something internal that's been eating at you for a while and you've been shoving away, you have free will in your own mind and with your own time to sit with that and say, what is this? Connect the dots and say, what started this? Why is it persistent? What would it mean if it were true? What would it look like? Is it something that, how do I address it? And maybe in this whole thing of what we said about letting go of expectations, maybe it's something I need to accept, or maybe it's something I need to defeat. But first, I have to recognize which it is and why.
Yep. Solid. Solid stuff. So, guys, start asking those questions. Start leveraging the experience of Kevin and I that we shared with you guys at a high level of vulnerability today. Kevin, I really appreciate you sharing that, dude. That was ballsy, bro.
Thanks.
So I appreciate that for the sake of learning of every one of you on here. And just remember, we really appreciate you listening. Make sure you subscribe. We're on all the podcast channels. Leave us a review if you are inspired to, and let us know how we're doing. But most of all, share this with somebody that needs it, somebody that needs to start engaging in these types of conversations And hopefully then they'll start asking themselves the questions necessary to start living more authentically, right? Because that's what
That's
the
it.
shadow work does, is it brings you to your more authentic self, which midlife is where we confront that. Um, like normal, you guys know I'm always pumping up his gas. Kevin's a great writer. So every episode, we have an amazing newsletter that comes out if you like to read about this stuff as well. And that is on maninthemiddleshow.com. And that's our Substack. Make sure you subscribe to that. We can also engage in conversations in that. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See it.